After a child is born, we see all the celebrations, right? The endless social media posts, all the joy. But what about what happens after the party's over? For some new mothers, behind closed doors, a really different and totally silent struggle is just beginning. Okay, let's dive into this often unspoken truth.
This right here, this single sentence, just captures this massive cultural expectation perfectly. It's like the script is already written, a baby arrives, and a mother's happiness must immediately follow. Any other reaction? Well, that scene is wrong, abnormal, even suspicious.
And this is the terrifying question for some women, the one they're afraid to even whisper to themselves. What happens when the reality of your new life is just a stark, painful contrast to that happy picture everyone painted for you?
This is what that darkness actually looks like. It's a complete inversion of every single maternal instinct we're told is natural. So instead of love, there's just emptiness. Instead of bonding, there's irritation. It is so frightening, so confusing, and because of the stigma, it's a battle that's fought in almost complete isolation.
So, to really understand what's happening, we need to move past the simple labels. We're going to decode what postpartum depression, or PPD, actually is, what it really feels like. The key word here is shock. This isn't about being weak or not loving your baby enough. PPD is a medical condition, and it's a direct result of the shock of childbirth. See, after birth, a woman's hormone levels, estrogen and progesterone, they don't just drop, they absolutely plummet. And when the brain can't handle that massive hormonal crash on top of sleep deprivation and this overwhelming new responsibility, well, this is the result. And these are the real symptoms. We're not talking about just feeling a little down. It's a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It's feeling numb when you're supposed to be feeling this overwhelming love. And that last one is so crucial, the fear of being alone with the baby, which is so often driven by this crushing guilt of not feeling like a good mother. Which brings us to probably the most painful and misunderstood part of this whole experience. With all this negativity, this irritation, does it mean these mothers actually hate their children? The answer, and this is so important, is a clear and absolute no. The emotion isn't hate, it's resentment. And it's not truly directed at the child as a person, but at what that child has come to symbolize. And this right here is the source of that resentment. Think of it like a scale. On one side, you've got these huge, profound losses. Your freedom, your sleep, your very identity. On top of that, you might have new financial pressures or feel emotionally neglected by your partner. Now, in a healthy state, the brain kind of balances all these huge sacrifices with an overwhelming feeling of love. But with PPD, that emotional scale just collapses under the weight of the losses, and the baby, totally unfairly, becomes the symbol of it all. Now, this overwhelming resentment can be a symptom of PPD. But in some rare and very severe cases, the situation can escalate into something even more frightening. We need to talk about postpartum psychosis. This is the question that people are terrified to even ask. But we have to, because staying silent on this topic can lead to the most tragic consequences imaginable. What is happening inside a mother's brain that could possibly lead to such a terrifying urge? Let's be very clear. This is a medical emergency. Postpartum psychosis is not a character flaw. It's a condition where the brain is genuinely not working properly. A woman's thoughts get distorted, she might hear things that aren't there, and she can develop these intrusive, unwanted thoughts of harming her child. This just captures the internal horror of psychosis perfectly. The woman who is experiencing these urges isn't a monster. Far from it. She is often the very first victim of these thoughts. She's terrified of herself and what her own mind is doing, and she's trapped in a nightmare that she can't control. So if this is a medical condition, a real illness, why isn't it always treated like one? Well, this brings us to the central conflict, this dangerous clash between cultural superstitions and psychological reality. Just look at this comparison. On one side, you have these awful accusations, wickedness, possession, witchcraft. These are labels that condemn a person. On the other side, you have the medical facts. An unwell brain, a hormonal crash, a desperate need for help. One of these paths leads to judgment and punishment. The other leads to compassion and healing. And this is why so many women suffer in silence. They feel like they're trapped in a cage that's built from fear. Fear of being judged as a bad mother, of being labeled crazy or spiritually corrupt, and of course, the ultimate fear, having their child taken away from them. This forces them to hide their pain, often until it's far too late.
So what can we do? The key is to shift our whole perspective. We have to learn to see the symptoms not as character flaws, but as what they really are, a desperate cry for help. These are the signs. If you see a new mother doing these things, withdrawing, refusing to care for the baby, it is not time for judgment. It's time for observation, for patience, and for immediate, compassionate support. And if you hear statements about the baby being better off dead or an intense fear of being alone with the child, these are not signs of wickedness. They are medical red alerts.
Ultimately, it all comes down to this. Every single time we choose judgment over understanding, we contribute to the silence, and that silence can be deadly. The most important thing to take away from all this is that postpartum mental illness is real. It's treatable, and speaking about it openly, without fear, without superstition, is the first and most critical step to saving lives.